Robert, Happy New Year to you. Thank you very much for your time. I want to ask you, you wrote about this pressure in your Tuesday column. Are you worried about the housing bubble bursting? Is that what this is about?
Well, I think that, first of all, people who've bought houses further back, they have been using all the spare cash they can find to repay their loans at a faster rate. So there's a very big section of the housing market where the borrowers are ahead of the ball and are in pretty good shape. But those who have borrowed more recently, they've borrowed heavily. My builder mates and friends tell me that if interest rates were to rise, say, 2%, that would have a very big effect on that group, and it would certainly affect people wanting to buy houses. So the people who have bought recently are the most vulnerable to a interest rate rise. And I think we're going to get a rise because the bond rates in the US are jumping quite sharply. That will affect bank costs in Australia. And I think that our inflation and our overall level of activity, once COVID's out of the way, will make the Reserve Bank look quite closely at rate rises.
Well, you've just mentioned when COVID's out of the way. That's the good part of this story. But are you suggesting that banks become even more, apply more scrutiny to those who might be borrowing in future and those who are unable to pay their mortgage? There'll be more scrutiny once those interest rate rises?
Oh, yes. Once you start to get into a higher interest rate environment, then all the banks say, well, hang on, where's our problem? What should we be looking at? And yes, they'll scrutinise everything much more closely. And if interest rates have gone up, say 1%, I think that's quite manageable. But it's when they start rising towards 2% and certainly beyond 2% rises that you would see quite a very big change in the whole situation.
So what has got to be done here? And we've got, Labor possibly becoming a new government. Let's presume that the incumbent stays there. They'll handle this crisis probably in different ways. How should it be handled?
The first thing is that as to how you should handle it, first of all, you've got the market. If interest rates around the world go up, ours will go up too. Banks need to be pretty careful about how they lend when those rates start to rise. One aspect of this whole exercise that we don't talk about a lot is that the amount of money that is in a house price that's government charges, government delays, it's state and local, it's about 40 to 50%. And one of the things we can do to help this whole situation is to reduce those charges. Now, state governments and local governments will not want to do that because they're relying on the revenue. But I don't think there's any country in the world where the government charges and taxes and delays and bureaucracies account to 40% or 50%.
Just wrong, isn't it?
Absolutely wrong. And so if you're going to tackle this, start there.
Yeah. See, you think about stamp duty, for instance, and I know a lot of people have called for governments to take stamp duty away, and governments rarely take taxes away. But here, I've always said about stamp duty, you don't even get a stamp, Robert.
Yes, and when that stamp duty is put on, or that GST or the other things, the banks lend the money to finance that. And that's the price of the house goes up to cover that. And that's one of the factors in this housing boom. This very important factor, of course, is that the banks are prepared or have been prepared to lend to finance these enormous government charges added onto the house price.
Yeah. So, what demographic are we most concerned about here? The younger demographic?
Younger demographic. Look, what's happened in the housing market now, I'm talking about the new housing market, particularly in cottages in the outer suburbs. The migrants of the last 2, 3 and 4 years have saved their money, their families have backed them, and they have been the big buyers of these cottages in the outer suburbs of Sydney and Melbourne and Brisbane. And it's that area of the community that are most vulnerable at this point of time from interest rate rise.
All right. Robert, I've got to run, but thank you very much for letting us in on all of this, and it's something we'll no doubt follow through the year. Thank you for your time.
Pleasure.